presenting your closing comments.
Thank you for listening to us today. We appreciate it, and we appreciate all the comments that were heard. I will say, this is just about the ordinance itself, and we know that there's another process that the project will need to go to be permitted, and that's the next phase of this. So this is really just establishing, as everybody said, the rules of the game, so everybody knows what they need to meet to move forward. I will say there's been some questions about setbacks and decommissioning. I will just note that the Public Service Commission does also require permits, and they have a very extensive decommissioning set of rules and requirements, including financial security both during construction and for the life of the project. That's based, and they do not take into account salvage value. They have to date refused to, because they know it fluctuates. So there are very clear requirements of decommissioning projects, and they have to file annual reports once they're operational to show they're still in operation. The other thing is the setbacks. It's not just meeting the county setbacks. It will eventually be meeting the PSC setbacks, which are 3 times tip height from non-participating landowners and community buildings, as well as their sound regulations. So I say that not because it's part of what we're talking about today specifically, but more that I don't think you have to feel like you have to cover everything in the universe in your ordinance. You have a pretty good extensive ordinance for your county. You also have a state process that's going to impose another layer of regulations on top of that. I guess I would just end with, if there's any questions about anything proposed at this point, or any other things that we can offer, I'm happy to do that at this time.
Okay. Do you guys have any direct questions for Molly?
So you're saying, like Phil said, well, just say a bad storm comes through, and they're just level. We've seen that before. Who does clean that up?
Yeah.
What expense? Whose expense is that?
Yeah. These projects have insurance, and part of it is an insurance claim when they're damaged. There actually is a project right now, and it's a Solomon project that was damaged in some windstorms, and they're in an hour we'll be talking to the PSC about where they're at and what they're going to be doing on that project. But that's an example of where there's layers of protection. There's both the PSC is monitoring. They have to report annually and tell them what turbines are out of operation, and if you drop below 10% of your capacity, minimum 10% for 2 years, you have to decommission or have a plan of how you're going to put those back in place. And the basics are that they lose exorbitant amount of money when they aren't operating. So it's in everybody's interest to get those back operating if they are damaged. It's pretty rare. That's the most expensive one I've seen in the last 20-some years in North Dakota, but it does happen.
So obviously everybody's talking wind and talking about the what ifs.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of people, well, maybe some people haven't went to a wind farm that was damaged and seen what it can look like. I had the opportunity to travel through Oklahoma like 2 weeks ago, and we got down there and ended up in a guy's place that he has wind turbines all the way around him. And he said, one thing you got to really be careful about is what happens, and down there they're in rangeland, patchland. And everybody says lightning doesn't strike the same place twice, but he's had a turbine on his location struck several times. And I said, well, and what happens, because I don't know. I don't have a wind turbine near me. And what he was saying is, well, you usually get a phone call that turbine over there is on fire, and the blades have stopped turning, and it burns out. But then how do you clean up the mess afterwards? And it does Liquor Tail or PRC or whoever's operating it, I guess, is what my question is. are they gonna be able to clean up underneath of them to the point that there isn't gonna be fiberglass in the hay? Cause I propose an amendment bringing something like that forward, about making certain that there isn't gonna be fiberglass in the hay or when they're grazing. And if somebody's raising food crops on their pinto beans or whatever, and their food crop is contaminated with fiberglass, I mean, is there gonna be something, are them people gonna be hung out to dry, or is there something there, or are they gonna have to fight to, I mean, he was talking like when that got hit, that blade was sitting up at 12 o'clock and the wind obviously blowing, and there's pieces from the size of, half the size of this table down to the size of this pen that are getting spread out there. Is there gonna be sufficient cleanup if something like that happens? Or if there isn't sufficient cleanup, are people gonna be taken care of?
Yeah, and I'm not an expert on Oklahoma, but I will say the regulations are different. I know there isn't the same kind of.
And I was just gonna say, that's Oklahoma, this is here, but I mean, for somebody that is inexperienced and naive to it, I mean, and different companies can be different. What his response to me was, when he got a hold of them, he's like, well, sue us. That was the response of the developer, and he said he got somewhere with his that was struck, but the neighbor didn't get struck anywhere. What their proposed solutions were burn the range off. The fiberglass doesn't burn, the grass did.
Yeah.
Then their solution was to plow it under, plow under rangeland. And then what their proposed solution was, they actually came out and walked shoulder to shoulder and picked it up. But they did that before they took the blade down. So then it recontaminated the rest. So what he ended up doing was getting a big commercial lawnmower with a razor and going and bagging his pasture to keep his cows from dying.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't wanna see that. I'm not saying it's gonna happen, but I don't wanna see that.
Yeah, and context, I grew up in the middle of nowhere in southeastern Montana on a ranch, and we had cows, and I get what you're saying. The whole thing, the oversight that the Public Service Commission has is stringent, and there isn't that same oversight in Oklahoma. So the example is, that is what happened. There was damage to turbines on the project. It's a Courtney Lane project. I actually permitted it long time ago, and it's been operating for several years. It was damaged, and that's exactly what the commission is talking with them about, is clean up. They've been doing monthly reporting to the commission since it's happened. Like, there's clear oversight. They're gonna make sure that it's handled the right way. The other thing is, I know you're concerned about your constituents, and that's the right thing to do, but these landowners are negotiating their leases, and they do pick who they sign that lease with and who they feel comfortable with. So I think I come back to the landowner right to make that call in that piece of it. So I feel good because the PSC's oversight is very stringent and regulated. Plus, I trust the landowners to make their own choices.
So the current setback in Eddy County, and I believe it's with the PSC also, from a non-participating property line would be 1.1 times the tip height.
Correct,
Yeah.
but the distance from a residence is 3 times tip height.
3 times tip height, correct. But so what I'm getting at is that a tip height of 650 feet above? Is that what these are proposed at?
I don't know honestly
Okay.
the specifics,
So
but
somewhere in between
650.
it's like 600, I'll be
Yeah.
generous. So at 600 feet, and that's about the size of these turbines that were down there, what he was telling me is that it would contaminate about 40 acres. Now, obviously, the big pieces were closer, your smaller pieces were further away, but he figured about a 40-acre chunk. Now, was that in a circle at the base, or was it all downwind? But what I'm saying is that 1.1 times the tip height off of a non-participating property line, a non-participant could end up with, in a weather event, in a catastrophic weather event, they could end up with stuff over there. Is there protections for that person?
Yeah, because that's why there is oversight from the PSC, is to ensure that the project is being operated, and they have the obligation to maintain the site and anything that's affected by the project. So if something flew onto somebody else's property, that's what they're paying attention to. So I think maybe I don't want us to go down, I think you and I can sit and have a good conversation for a long time, so I don't want to take us down a rabbit hole on this. But I that's where I'm coming to, like, you can't think of absolutely everything that's going to happen in every way, but you don't have to. You do have another commission that is overseeing these projects.
Okay, I guess moving along, I'd like to, thank you very much. Ashley, if you could maybe come over here more, or no, you don't want to.
That's fine.
We'd like to start the discussion on the zoning, on the amendments and the recommendation. So, I guess we're gonna start right off the first page, right?
Or we went on.
What
Yeah,
kind of
what
way?
kind of you want us to look at?
I would say we should use this one.
The one that we have, not the Clifford Hill.
Yes. That's what I would say. The county, I believe, will have to develop their own sets of rules.
Yes.
Okay, I guess right off the bat, we have this first page, as you can see, and you guys can't see, but, it's just some verbiage changes where we're crossing out zoning to county. Second one, same thing. Third one, same thing. Fourth one, it just basically points out the members. Same thing, on this whole page. I don't know how should we proceed? How do you recommend to proceed?
You click,
Ashley, do you have, excuse me, John, have you?
I got it. So, this is from previous meetings that I've been in where we're dealing with a absolute boatload of proposed amendments, is where, and this came from the state organization, they would read the proposed amendment, point out what was changed, and then there'd be a motion to adopt. There wouldn't be a second, they would go to the next one, motion to adopt in a second, then they would go to the next one. If somebody didn't like one of them or wanted to further discuss it, they would ask to set it aside. You would vote on the batch, and then you would come back to your set aside. That's the way it's been ran on a large amendment.
What do you got, John?
I guess I haven't seen it happen that way, so I don't have a.
You've got more experience than me, so.
Well, this is quite a large, I mean, it's a full revision, and I guess I hope that Ashley and, our state's attorney has reviewed the, amendments. I don't know if we've got to go over them all one by one. If we had a motion to approve the packet based on Ashley's, recommendations, and then there was a specific one, we could bring that up during discussion, and amend a motion if there was, some